Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. You already know who it is and who it ain't. It ain't your boy and it is your man, the blackest heart, the blackest mind, the blackest man on social media, signing blacking and shining again, asking you to hit the mother cuss word share button because the message is more important than the messenger. So here's the deal, y'all. I have listened and I want to give a shout out to BGS. BGS first said they don't want us. I mean, not first, but he said this a few days ago. Shout out to LOM as well, Lina MGTOW, who doesn't seem to be a fan of the message, but doesn't disagree with it, but rather says it's an overstatement of the obvious and kind of too little too late. I understand why they have different takes on it. And that's because one of the worst, or any of the worst things you can do to people will leave them arguing about what was done to them and trying to figure it out. We are that body to whom it was done, and we're still trying to figure out exactly what was done and how much. Allow me to be the first to say this. When it comes down to what I went through, being treated differently, being over scrutinized, hyper analyzed, or over analyzed, and everything else, I'll say that it was very easy for me to put it together once that sister at the job explained it. The second one, really, the one that gave the breakdown of it. When I began to tell you all here on YouTube about this, some of you would say, man, it's the same thing with me. And I would wonder which part of the country in which you live, because I know that this gender-based colorism I talked about that wound up leading me to the red pill indirectly does vary from place to place. Like, i.e. in the South, I came up in a medium-sized city in the South, not far really from bigger cities. And so we had the same media, but the styles were not the same. So with access to the same media, we saw New Jack City, we saw Boys in the Hood, we had access to it, so we had similar influences that we had to face. And I say face for a reason. When you left the semi-urban South in which I grew up and you went into the rural South, things changed. If you went into small town Mississippi, New Jack City was a movie that some people had heard about. They were going to see it in a few months, when it finally made its way to cable, something like that. They would have had to travel to Jackson to get a movie theater, or Gulfport or Biloxi. It could be just one county inland from the coast, but not quite yet in Hinds County or Pearl County. Same with Alabama, in between Mobile and Montgomery. Places like Dothan and Enterprise. That's the rural South. So I would ask these questions. Now what I've come to understand, because I actually listened to what BGS was saying so that I could be very clear on where I agree and disagree, which is what I do when anybody puts out a video when I listen. It dawned on me. They're judging us extra harshly, and he's right about why they're doing so. They're judging us extra harshly because they don't want us. And this is why it was that I went through the extra scrutiny and the extra judgment and the mistreatment, the differentiated treatment, for which I have every right to be upset and angry. And I'm really more so just heartbroken. And I'm really more upset about being lied to than anything else. But likewise, I readily admit that I was a bit surprised because, see, now when I think about it, brothers been going through the same thing that have abundant melanin. what's been going on this whole time has really been nothing more than sisters don't want brothers in general because of what all we don't have and what we don't own, and they make no apologies for it. And now you've got more and more sisters that have the nerve to just come out and say, I don't want brothers. I don't want brothers because y'all are black and y'all don't have the things that Massa has, that Zaddy's got. I don't want to hear why you don't have them. I don't care. But you're supposed to be loyal to me, even if you're brainwashed. Even when you face brainwashing to go and pick the non-black woman, you should be loyal to me because that's just brainwashing. They're just doing that because they own everything, because it's their system. But you should be loyal to me in spite of that. However, I'm not going to be loyal to you because I want things. I want what I see on TV. And even if most of the Beckys and Ambers in real life don't have what I see on TV, I still want these things, and I'm going to mistreat you because you don't have them. But I'll still screw you because you do have the testosterone and the evidence of the testosterone that we want. So I'll still do that. But even then, I'll probably mistreat you later. So what we have is a situation in which, frankly, the white Western man is going through something similar. I just don't particularly sympathize because of what they've done. But their women are doing something similar to them. Well, they get used for resources, and that same woman will turn around and use us for something we were born with. But see, by the same token, we're pretty much being chided for what we don't have. So the Western woman in general is chiding her own man, whichever one of the two races he is, for whatever that man does not have, or whatever she simply thinks he doesn't have. And that's what we're facing. Now, my channel ain't just about women rejected us and that's end. That's the end of it. No, my channel is about understanding it so that you know that you understand why you owe them no loyalty when it comes to mating and exclusivity. That's my goal and my purpose. I'm sorry, but LOM is right. The community's dead. And BGS was right to go in on Dr. Omar and tell Dr. Omar, you know that it's bad. You know, when you're talking to us outside of these microphones and out of these platforms, when you just in the barbershop chopping up with black men, you know that broad is pushing you away. He's had 2 kids and didn't marry either mother. And he believes in marriage. I believe him when he says he believes in marriage and family, that he believes in it because he was raised in one. But what the question is, why did he not marry them? Because in the end, he was pushed away. I've been there before. My eldest, that's my son, born out of wedlock. Now, I don't tell you all why I didn't marry his mother, only because I haven't had a talk with him about why we didn't marry. He's recently come of age into maturity, and if he asks the question, then I'll tell him why we didn't marry. But no, I'm not telling you all about it, but I know what the reason is. And I see that when it comes down to Brother Johnson, Dr. Brother Johnson, what's going on? I see that, same thing. And he's admitted he was wrong. He did say, I made that mistake twice. He didn't lie about it. He didn't try to cover it up. He didn't even try to justify it. The thing was, the justification was exactly what he does not want to admit. As Mr. Anderson would say, it is that black B word. LOM would say it's that Klingon B word with the hybristophilia. I'm not going to go into all the stuff about the collections and the fraud, and I'm not going to go into all of that this time. But somebody did say that you can go on to the Delaware County Assessor and find out how far behind he is, how little he owes compared to how much he has collected. And he's sitting up here talking about what he wants people to do for free for the school and saying that every other community would do that. That's been another mistake. And see, this is why I have to say that when you become pro-black, you must be educatedly pro-black. And he went and got an education. He went and got all of that. But when you aren't willing to actually learn about other groups of people, good or bad, just learning so that you know, when you're not willing to do that, which he's generally not been willing to do, you're going to think that you're entitled to do certain things because they all do them. And that's not true either. You see, if this was a school for little Arab Muslims, no, it is not true that people would just be showing up and doing what you want them to do and for free and nobody would charge. They would not do it. I know of an Arab man that opened up a store. He opened up something in Atlanta. It was next to Al Farouk Masjid, the 14th Street Masjid. I met the guy, Lebanese fella. He had actually been married to an African American lady from Mississippi. He still to this day talks about her cooking. I met the African American brother that managed the store for him. They both told me that they have to not say who the owner is, not because the brother's going to be ashamed, but because the Arabs were already assuming that an Arab owned the store. They would go in and try to get free food. Brother Johnson didn't take the time to actually sit with people of other backgrounds and learn these things. And granted, he would probably say, well, I'm not like you, black man. If he knew I existed, he'd probably say, I'm not like you, black man. You say you light skin. You and Sarah Suit said he can do that and they'll open up to y'all. No. See, you're the same one that would have said that if we had tried to blend in with these other groups, they would have said, nigga, get back. You're still a nigga. You ain't one of us. You can't have it both ways. If you take the time, and granted, I have said that I've been allowed to spy on some of these other groups of people. I have said I've been able to do it. But even that's going to have certain limits. I simply took the time to get to know them and found and just let them talk about certain things and learned that they are trifling too. The Chinese and the Koreans are really trifling. They stunt. Most of what they seem to have is because they stunt. That's all it is. They ain't really got that much more. Busy stunting, up to their ears in debt stunting. And a lot of times it's gambling debts. They trifling too. They just sound different. And they don't discuss their triflingness in English in front of us. That's all that is. Same thing with the Arabs. They just don't discuss it in English in front of us. Same with Latin Americans. They'll discuss it in English or Spanish sometimes in front of us. They have similar pro-Latino groups and movement groups and things like that, largely inspired by ours. So no, I'm not going to listen when you get up there and start talking about only black people. No, bro, sometimes that's true. A lot of times it is not. Brother Johnson, you need to just go ahead, come on out and admit that sister that you call Mother Earth Queen Goddess drove you, me, BGS, LOM, even Kevin Samuels away, and that Mr. Samuels is not lying. Now, the real reason why people should be upset about Mr. Samuels being followed now in this day is not because, well, maybe he's GAY. No, that ain't the case. He's a little soft-mannered, yeah, but not GAY. Not with the evidence that's out there. The fact that the ATL community of GAY men has not tried to out him is evidence of his innocence of that. He ain't had no part to play in nothing like that because, as I said before, they don't let you slide. You don't get in them drawers with any of them, turn around, blow up big, and then not acknowledge them, and they just leave you alone. They ain't gonna do that. And they will keep receipts. They will get the receipts before they even try to come out. He's been at this for a long time. Dudes, see, the real reason why anybody has a right to be upset about him being followed is not because it's wrong to listen to him now, but because you've had other men who've been out here saying the same thing, and people would not pay attention. They wouldn't even consider the possibility of us being right. That's been my issue. And to the credit of some of my friends from childhood and some of my personal friends and colleagues at the job now, I can say that when they heard Mr. Samuel's message, they didn't sit up here and discredit mine right off the bat either. I can say that. One of them, you know who you are. Shout out to your blood. Kemunachin, Janub, Carlos Shokti. Okay, now he knows who he is if he did not know before. One of them knew about this before Mr. Samuels. He had not had chats about this before Mr. Samuels. He did not sit up and say to me, well, Black Man, you just crazy. He could have disagreed if he observed it differently, but he certainly did not. He didn't say, well, you just insane, Black Man. He considered the possibility. And I'll give it to NYC Songman, one of my commentators and subscribers and listeners. Shout out to you too. He has a valid point that we men can't just get stuck in the angry young man phase. And that's true. I'm too old to get stuck in it. I mean, I'm in my middle 40s now. So I'm too old to get stuck in that. And that's true. I have to admit that older black men themselves have largely been lied to, and they passed on a lot of this stuff to us. However, I'm not going to let older black men off the hook for one thing largely, and that is, while acting like they were wise and knowing that they were supposed to actually be wise, they passed on to us a upped up culture. And what was the excuse for it? Because I said so when I'm older. It is that culture of using one's age as a justification for shuck fit that I'm staying on them. And I get on young cats too. Young cats need to stop with this. Well, you know, I'm 15, I'm 16, I'm 17, my hormones all over the place. I can't turn nothing down. Bruh, you can't use that as an excuse. It's too effing dangerous. And before it got this dangerous, it wasn't maybe necessarily that bad. But you see, there were people like me who told folks it's dangerous. You probably would have had some of us in every city. I was the one in my city. It's dangerous. You can't be that easy. They can't respect you. And if they can't respect you, they ain't going to give you nothing. No way. You got to have standards of your own for this to work. Man, bro, you know, I'm 17, man. I got to get in when I can, bro. I can't be turning it. Okay, you can't turn it down. Well, then she's going to use that because you can't turn it down. Yeah, but you know, I put it down. I'll make her come too. Okay, that does have a certain, it gives you a bit of an immunity. But even then, if she's being told to control you, then foul the huck, are you going to turn around and control her just because you putting it down? Either you're putting it down and she knows you put it down because she can compare you to a bunch of other dudes that's failing or just not doing as well as you, which means she's still a thought, or you're the only one she knows about. So you've imprinted her and she's still being told to control you. But since she can't compare you to others to know how much better you are, even below the belt, let alone above the belt, she's going to succumb to the pressure. So either way it goes, you're getting a bad deal. So there were dudes like us, young cats and these other young cats just could not fuck the shuck up and think about it. And I get on both of them because when someone comes with another view of things, black men in general and black women, old and young in general, light and dark, rich and poor, have one problem. And that is not only for us that we have it. The Arabs have it. The Chinese have it. The Koreans have it. Most people have it. And that is interrupting before you even find out what the other person's talking about. Just interrupt because you know everything and nobody else knows anything. That's a mistake. That's our mistake. So I'm just going to go ahead and say it. That we messed this up. But we brothers are innocent of one thing. We did not drive the black woman away. That's not something we did. It was a few brothers that could do whatever they wanted to and get away with it, that did what they wanted because they could get away with it. And most brothers that could do what they wanted didn't do everything they wanted to do just because they could get away with it. It wasn't all them brothers that could do it that were doing it. So you had a few dudes that were doing whatever they could get away with because they could. They got sisters upset, and so they turn around and push away the other brothers. And I'm gonna say this too about Sergeant Willie Pete. Shout out to you, but bruh, let me explain something to you, man. I don't care if a dude calls in to some of these shows and doesn't even sound like a man. And I'm gonna tell you why I no longer fiverguck about that. While respecting women's right and inclination to prefer manly men, while I respect that, the fact remains that the women about whom these men are complaining don't even act like women, sir. And the fact is also that a sister being 280 pounds, no taller than any man, but being 280 pounds with a bad attitude and darn near an Adam's apple and all this manliness and all this entitlement is far worse than some of these brothers that don't have much bass in their voice and sound like they've been spending their whole childhood indoors reading comics and watching Star Trek. The nerdiness of a black man. And granted, I got problems when I hear black men actually sound like they're white. I get sick of that at times. You ain't gonna turn to me and tell me nothing with a voice like that. But the fact remains that if we're honest about it, the sisters have been far worse. Far worse. So, Brother Johnson, I'll say this before I finish up. Brother Johnson, you just gonna have to understand that Kevin Samuels has been right. Ever since the only time Kevin Samuels was wrong, and you didn't have a further-mucking thing to say about him at this point, sir. The only time Kevin Samuels has ever been wrong was when he was going in on men like they were somehow supposed to know all these things that women want and don't admit to. Cutting men off, talking like they were somehow supposed to have figured out that their own mothers had lied to them. Like, how could you not know your mother's a liar? You know, that type of thing. That's when, if you're going to go in on him about that. You want to sit up and talk about beta males? You still pandering to the same ones that drove you away, even after having your babies. Otherwise, you'd have married them, right? I think you would have. You're going to have to admit that the difference between the black man who's traumatized and the black woman who's traumatized, both of them are. But the difference is that you know furthermucking well, you're not allowed to bring them your trauma and bleed on her. She won't tolerate it. But she's going to come to you with her trauma and bleed on you. And you're supposed to be there strong like a rock and absorb the trauma and take it away from her. You're not required, Brother Johnson, to be Superman if she gets to sit back and be Lois Lame. And that's exactly the deal they're insisting upon. And this is why we can't stay with them no more. And frankly, if the smartest thing you could have done, Brother Johnson, smartest thing you could have done years ago would have been to stay on Islam, not necessarily Salafia, because I know in Philly that's heavy, but to stay with Islam as a Muslim, to stay with it. And then take your butt to Malaysia or Indonesia. And if they weren't black enough for you, then to take your butt to one of the Muslim parts of the continent and find you a woman that could submit to you if you were paying the cost to be the boss. That would have been the best thing you could have done. Because I know brothers that have kept it black and they still looking. And I know brothers that said, well, you know what? I'm going to stay away from the Becky, but I ain't keeping it black. I'm not just going to limit myself to sisters no more either. And they generally find someone most of the time Southeast Asian, and they're happy most of the time. And then I know some others that are just like, I'm going to give me that bite witch. And you know what I mean when I say that. That's a spoonerism. And they wind up happy for a little while, and then they get turned on. Those are the three ways I've seen it turn out. And you chose the first one. I'm going to stick with the sisters. Look at you, still looking. And you're going to be looking. Your height does not even help you. When it's helped other men, it has helped you less than it has helped other men. Why, sir? Because you're pro-black. The fact that you are pro-black and have to struggle to put money together for things, which apparently you don't have to do anymore. But the fact that you're involved in the struggle, that automatically takes something away from you in the eyes of sisters. It's like they don't respect men like you who have the most race loyalty to them. You get the least respect from them. And when you get the least respect, you consequently get the least draws too. Another thing too, frankly, so you played yourself when you got into that childhood argument with Sarasut and Seti. That was another thing. You see a Caucasian in the mirror. You didn't even call him one. You just said he sees one in the mirror. I don't think he does. I've been in that kind of situation before. Even if he was teased about being light skinned when he was younger, and he would have gotten it not even a third as much as I would have, because his hair is still normal for us. Plus, I think he grew up in the north, far north, so he wouldn't have got it. Whereas I came up in the deep south. We caught it. Anyone on either end of the spectrum caught it when I was growing up. The only thing is that for a guy on my end of the spectrum, that's where the effeminization came in the minds of others, or the emasculation. That's where that came, and that's where the difference was. But I don't think that he would have come. I really don't think he would have ever at any point had any doubts about his ancestry, nor felt like he had something that he had to prove. Especially in adulthood. What is he, in his 40s? About as old as you or older? There's no way that any time within the last 3 decades that he's ever had the thought that he's got to prove his blackness, or that he possibly even could prove it to someone that refuses to believe in it in the first place. We have to learn that lesson at a very young age. When you are doubted, you're doubted, and that's it. You just leave it be. You can't prove anything differently. You played yourself jumping straight to that assumption without him ever saying anything about shade. And I'm not one of his supporters. He wouldn't be able to tolerate me if he knew I existed. You're just going to have to go ahead and admit. And you know what? If Sarasut and Seti, if he ain't found his queen yet, it's the same thing. How come? He's super black. He's giving the race loyalty that the sisters demand. Why has it not been rewarded? And I don't only mean with, yeah, brother, that's right. No, I mean, why has it not been rewarded with the compliments on one hand, the respect, the submission, and dropping them draws while she's young and fit and attractive? Because they don't feel like you or he are worth it. And this goes right back to what BG has said. They don't want us. They don't want me. They don't want you. They don't want Mr. Samuels. They don't want any of us. What they want is the resources of the man that took the resources from us. Then when they get them, they would want to come back to us for a little bedroom fun on the side. But they don't want us. And there's one more thing I'm going to say, because you touched upon this before. We can argue about Ma'Khia Bryant, and I previously said I wasn't going to talk about that case, but I'm going to go ahead and say this about her, because I've listened, looked at reports and everything, and then I'm going, and I'm going to sign out after this. Ma'Khia Bryant's case was unfortunate. I do not exonerate white cops exercising jurisdiction over black bodies. But it's not like this officer really had a choice. He really was in a situation in which he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. Should he have fired 4 times? No, he shouldn't. But by the same token, when he pulled up, he could only see what he could see. A fight going on, a lady down on the ground, and another lady, he did not know she was a teenager. He didn't have time to ask her age, about to stab another lady. And the lady that was about to get stabbed, I heard, was a passerby walking her dog and passed them by. But she was being apparently mistaken for an aggressor. How so? Because Ma'Khia was cornered. She was in a blind rage. She was scared and angry and confused because she was being attacked, which is why her father showed up. Because the foster mother, if we're going to be honest about it, the foster mother was the one that got her killed, and the other former foster children that showed up to fight her. She had no place to feel safe. I don't know what the argument was about. Father showed up, her birth father showed up to defend her, because that's what fathers do. And some say, why didn't he just take her home? Well, I'm sure he would have liked to do that. But when you a black man, you have to do stuff like that legally, because you could be thrown in prison. Not even just county jail, but prison for taking your own kids out of foster care at home with you. That's what this man was facing. I know. I can see why he would kick a grown woman down if she'd been fighting his daughter. I don't think that the cop had any choice but to fire at least once. It's the third, second, fourth shot that I got to ask him about. And I'm not going to have a opportunity to ask him. But the fault of it's going to lie with the adults that were there to fight with her. She seemed to have been in a blind rage, because I don't see why else she would be ready to stab the lady that was walking her dog, apparently. But she was big. She was big as a house. I'm not saying that it's okay to shoot her because of that. What I'm saying is that the officer did not know all of this stuff. All he saw was somebody adult size about to stab someone else. Like he wasn't even standing there. That's what he saw. See, I ain't gonna front. I know that there's a subconscious bias in the minds of many people, black and white, that makes you associate fat or dark skin or wide noses or nappy hair with defiance. So when someone with these traits does not do exactly what you say when you say it at the time you say it, you associate that with defiance. We're trained that way. That's what white supremacy does to us. But what does this have to do with everything else? In the end, it comes down to the fact that Ma'Khia Bryant, a teenager, practically a kid, was killed by another older sister that was in the foster care system, probably just to collect a check. That's a disgrace to sisters that don't do stuff like that. But they're the ones that keep on generating these news stories. It's always some ratchet Klingon B word that's causing these things. These news stories in which we have to argue about always comes down, you will find involved in there a bad choice that a sister made. Yes, even in the case of Breonna Taylor in Kentucky, although she had chosen to make better decisions after that point, to her credit, it still came back to bite her. I don't wish that she had. I'm not saying she earned it. I'm not saying Ma'Khia earned necessarily 4 bullets. But at the end of the day, what I'm getting at is that a lot of the mess is not being generated by guys. We're showing up reactively trying to fix things that we're not allowed to prevent in the first place. Brother Johnson, you're going to have to come to grips with this at some point. If your father finally went and got with a mayonnaise woman, it makes sense you would ask him why.